Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of the Modern Golden Age podcast. And today, it's the end of season one, and I have with me like all guests were special so far, but like this guest is really special. I have with me Visakan Veerasamy. Visakan, is that how I pronounce your name or your
That's fine. Yeah,
surname? Yeah.
that's good.
So
Yeah,
thank you so much for being here, Visa. I'm really excited to have you on. How are you?
nice. Thanks for having me. I'm good. Getting by. I finished my book a couple of few months ago. I quit smoking, and so
Yeah.
I'm trying to get around to writing essays,
Yeah.
making some progress. But I'm pretty happy.
Yeah. Well, like it will be hard for me because it's already hard to articulate thoughts in English when I'm focused, and I'm so excited to have you here. So I'll just ask for sorry if I take a little bit longer to ask questions, but yeah. So I met you through Twitter, and you're one of the most interesting person that I follow. You've been mentioned in all this podcast, in all the episodes of the podcast, because
Wow.
most people that I met, I actually met through Twitter. And so you're a big fan of Twitter and tweeting. And my first question would be like, how would you describe yourself in one tweet?
Describe myself in one tweet. They say one tweet.
Yeah.
Well, so friendly ambitious nerd, I guess. And before I said friendly ambitious nerd, I used to think another phrase I liked was polytribal weird heart. And so
Mm,
polytribal, I mean being a member of many different tribes simultaneously. And by weird heart, I mean just being compelled to express myself in all of its nuance, I guess, or its color. Like so I think everyone relates to that in some way. Everyone's a bit
mm,
different, everyone's a bit strange, and but not everybody goes on to enact that out loud. And
mm,
I've always felt, I think so I grew up as a minority in my country, and I have a weird name. I'm tall, dark, and I look strange. And so I've always received more attention than I knew what to do with, which
mm,
isn't, I don't think that's super universal. But so it's almost like if people are always going to be singling me out for attention, like in school, for example, or people are always going to be pointing at me, then I might as well kind of give them something to look at or something to, like have something to say, right? Like, so I now I'm remembering that, like when I was in school, if like a bunch of kids are talking in class, which as kids do, like
mm-hmm.
the teacher would almost always pick me to as an example. Like, Visa, do you have
Yeah.
something to share with the class? And it's
Yeah.
like, I'm not the only one who's talking. Everyone's talking, but I'm very visible. So they
Yeah.
point at me, and I'm like, okay, if you're gonna ask me to share stuff with the class, then I should prepare, right? I should have something to say, and like have a joke or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, in a tweet, I would say polytribal, weird heart, friendly, ambitious nerd, curious, kind, ambitious, as I already said that.
Yeah.
Just always hungry for something new and exciting, and always almost sometimes I say haunted by visions of
Mm,
what could be.
mm,
Another story I sometimes tell is that when I was in junior college, there were these doors. Like, so there's two doors to get into the lecture theater where all the students go for lectures,
mm,
and both of the doors are double doors. So there's like two doors each, but they would leave one of the doors locked and the other door would open. So it's a very narrow corridor,
mm.
and it's like they would take 5 to 10 minutes to fill up the lecture theater because people are passing through those narrow single doors.
Yeah.
And I would be like, why don't we just open the second door? And so I would
Yeah.
do it. I would manually open the second door, and you can see that. Oh, once somebody opens the second door, like the
The
stream of students
people
is
flow.
way
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, it goes from 5 10 minutes to like 1 or 2 minutes instead. And you
Yeah.
multiply that by every lecture, every single day across the whole year. But like
Yeah.
nobody else did that. And it was like, if at the time, so I'm the kind of guy who would, with what I know now, I would make a bigger deal out of it. I would be like, and I don't. Most people might think, who cares? It's just some small thing. But what I
Yeah.
mean, it's so there's so much consequence downstream And so that's what I meant by like haunted by possibility. And
Yeah.
in a way, when I talk about golden ages and I talk about scenes and all, it's all just variations of that. Why don't we just
Mm.
open the second door? It will be
Yeah.
so much. And it's nobody's job to do it, and everyone's focused on, I just got to get to lecture, I just got to get out. Like, so nobody is zooming out to see the bigger picture and think what's going on. And so, yeah, I'm always haunted by the adjacent possible. That's a phrase that's been on my mind recently. I think that's a Steven Johnson quote from, he talks about where good ideas comes from,
Yeah.
and it's just this idea that the present is not final, right? It's just an
Mm.
arbitrary configuration of, it's just how things. If you look in the past, right, you look at the past and think, oh, things were worse, or things were, when you look at the past, you can see how things are different now from the past. But we
Mm.
have this sort of end of history fallacy slash illusion where
Yeah.
you don't realize that everything is in transit. Everything
Yeah.
is
It's constantly
we're
changing.
in the middle. Yeah, it's not over, and
Yeah.
all of our institutions and structures and configuration, all of that is subject to change.
Yeah.
It's less likely that it will stay the same than not. Because change is
Mm-hmm.
only constant. Nothing stays the same for more than several decades or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But people don't seem to realize this. So yeah, so I'm not really answering your question, but it's
Yeah.
just
Yeah. No. No.
yeah, it's just friendly ambitious na poly travel weird heart. Always
Haunted
thinking about
by.
frames, always haunted by
Yeah.
possibility, and just always trying to trying to solve problems, trying to get people excited, trying to have fun, trying to
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So how did like I have so many questions.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you balance both of those things, like being haunted by what could be and actually having fun, because
Yeah.
those are seemingly two very different ideas, right? It's almost like if I'm always haunted by everything, that because the problem with the doors is not the problem with the doors, it's the mindset that makes the doors a problem, because not only that specific problem, but the mindset behind it will allow for a different set of problems. Like, and so it's easy to be haunted by that, while at the same time you're a very kind person, and you promote kindness and this calm and this having fun, right? So how did you balance those two different forces?
That's a good question. And I do remember there were periods of time, I think when I was a teenager, especially where, and I think there's something you might be able to describe as like the visionary's burden, right? Or something. It's just like, and yeah, haunting is really a good way of putting it. I think it's when you're so overwhelmed, and like there's a danger that you prioritize your vision over the reality you inhabit, and that can make you arrogant, headstrong, um, intolerant of others, right? Like you just get frustrated with people. Like, why don't you fuckers see what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, why are we all arguing about such stupid shit when there's so much? And I did struggle with that for a long time. And it's a good question. I think um, well, it feels dismissive to say you just learn to live with it, but so that's kind of the end goal, right? The end goal is to learn to live with it,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's kind of a parallel processing, I guess. Like so while all the vision stuff and possibility stuff is true, um, and I think the dominoes meme comes into play here as well. It's like you have to understand that when visions are manifest, they don't manifest because someone with a grand vision was very kind of very intense about it, and very well, I'm in multiple minds about this, but like the thing that I learned, I guess, is that it's really the small details that make up the big pictures. It's the small dominoes that lead up to the bigger dominoes. So one way I
Mm-hmm.
told the story was that so you feel like you're a hero in your own personal journey, or you feel like you're supposed to be a hero, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
some guy, and you're like, where am I? What's my place in the world? What should I do? And you're like, oh my god, there's a dragon in like destroying the villages down the next whatever. So now you feel burdened with, oh god, there's so much going on.
Mm-hmm.
We got to focus on the big things,
Mm-hmm.
and it turns out that um the little things make up the big things, you know. So
Yeah.
it's like I have this. If you're familiar with the game, The Witcher 3,
Yeah.
there's this funny side quest early in the game where so you are like this you play this character who's, you know, like superhumanly strong and powerful and whatever. And one of the early side quests is this old lady asks you to help her find her frying pan. And it just feels, it's like people joke about it like, oh, it's the frying pan in Witcher 3. It's like such a trivial, like, why
Mhm.
is this big important person or heroic character doing such a
Searching for a
trivial
frying
task?
pan. Yeah.
But I love that little thing because I feel that, you know, it's again, it's really, it's the little things that matter. And you have to make time to help the old lady find the frying pan. If not, what are you slaying the dragon for? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like the you slay the dragon to protect the village, right? And what is the village? The village is a network of relationships between all the people, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a home, right? It's where the campfire is, it's where food is, it's where family is, it's everything that
Mm-hmm.
you love. And if you know, you insult the old lady or you disregard her, then even if you slay the dragon, like you're not serving the village, right? So
Yeah.
and like so you have to have the humility to be like, even if I'm a dragon slayer, I'm not above helping the old lady find her frying pan. And the
Yeah.
beautiful thing I found is that in practice, the actual act of dragon slaying, it seems to me, it's never done by like, so even if in the story it's like, oh, there is one hero and he's gonna single-handedly kill the dragon with his sword or whatever. Um, Building the hero up to that point is always a collaborative communal effort. Somebody has to train him, somebody has to build the armor that make the armor for him, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
nobody accomplishes anything tremendous on their own. You know, even when we speak, none of us invented language ourselves. You know, language is this
Yeah.
ongoing multiplayer game that's been played for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Those are
And
years.
we get to inherit the thinking of other people, the language, the books, the stories. So it's really about seeing that there's this big collaborative process going on. And even if I have been blessed slash cursed slash burdened with some grand vision, to
Yeah.
manifest that vision, I have to keep my feet on the ground. You know, you have your head in
Mm-hmm.
the clouds, yeah, but you have to keep your feet on the ground. You have to, and so I came around to seeing that to serve my vision, I
Mm-hmm.
have to be humble. I have to be present. I have to give a shit about other people and care about their perspective. And so even if I'm like, you know, I'm trying to build a golden age and someone's like, oh, you know, I'm depressed or I'm sad or, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like a teenager comes along and says, oh, my girlfriend left me and I feel like shit. And I'm like,
Mm.
that's the frying pan. You know, like the
Yeah.
point of the golden age is to help the kids and to help
Yeah.
people live well. And yeah,
Yeah.
at some point it just became obvious, but I do remember what it's like when it felt like two separate things, and like that was agonizing, you know. And I felt like there's this beautiful, and I think when you separate the two, it becomes escapism. It's like to avoid
Mm-hmm.
the pain and unpleasantness of everyday life, you fixate on this imaginary ideal vision of the
Mm-hmm.
future. And you can see this play out in like political struggles where some people envision a communist utopia, or some people envision, and it's not necessarily any one particular ideology, but like
Mm-hmm.
ideology itself, you know. So I would say
Mm-hmm.
that so I don't like talking in terms of ideology, but if you were gonna have an ideology, I would say, where in your ideology do you help the old ladies with the frying pans? Because if you're
Yeah.
not, then that's not worth
Yes, that's not
talking
a
about.
good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. So I'm fascinated by your thinking, and one of the things that I like, anyone that follows on Twitter know that you're the thread guy. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have these multiple threads going on with different themes, and then you interconnect them. And one of the things that I was always curious was like, it I first of all, is that how your head works? And if
Mm-hmm.
so, like how how did you apply that to Twitter? Like, did you once you first log on Twitter, you realize that, oh, this is the perfect tool for to express my own thinking, or was it something that it slowly emerged, and then you started to apply it?
It's pretty slow. So, you know, I won't pretend that I had some like, you know, I didn't appear on the scene with a grand understanding of how to do threads or whatever.
Mm.
I've always loved the internet. I've always loved talking to people. I've always loved writing. And, you know, I've always been everywhere all at once, actually. Because I've always been on Twitter, on Facebook, on Reddit, Quora. Used to post on forums. I have my own blog. I have multiple blogs, and just anywhere where conversations are happening, I like to participate, and I like to think out loud. And writing was my first style of expression that I was good at from practice. And I remember seeing Mark Andreessen do Twitter threads back in like 2015 or so. He would number them. And I remember thinking that was really cool, because the cool thing about having, so that was before there was a Twitter thread functionality. But the cool thing about having a series of numbered tweets is that people can like specific tweets. So let's say you have a blog post that's like 10 tweets long, right? You don't know which part of the blog post is strongest unless you have a thoughtful commenter who really points it out. Whereas if you do a thread with 10 tweets long, people can like, favorite, retweet, reply. And so you get this higher resolution feedback. And so I was just doing a little bit of writing everywhere, and Twitter was where I was getting the best feedback. So that became like a feedback loop where I was posting more tweets. And then there's this guy, Ryan Jao, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Jawidajan, I think. I saw him replying to his old tweets and making like, and Mark Andreessen's style was, you sit down and you write an essay out in threads. Write an essay out as a thread, which itself is a cool activity. And then I saw this guy, Ryan, who was replying to old tweets from like months ago. I was like, how are you finding, like, how that's cool. It's like you're building out things slowly over time. And turns out that there's a search. So I didn't know that search existed. But once I saw him doing it, I was like, oh, I would like to do that as well. I feel like I repeat myself a lot. So even before Twitter, I'm on blogs, I'm blogging, and I feel like I've been blogging about the same thing intermittently for like 5 or 6 years. Every so often I blog about sleep. Every so often I blog about conflict. They have these topics that I return to. And wouldn't it be nice if it was all in one place instead of like disparate different posts? So when I saw Ryan do that, I was like, oh shit, I want to do that too. And he taught me how to search your own username, and then I started doing that. And then when quote tweets became possible, like there was another angle to that. So I was already doing these updating old threads just to keep track of things. And I was wondering recently, like, why I do it. And I realized that I suspect there are a couple of instances where once I had a physical paper notebook that I used to write in, like just daily updates. This was when I was in the military in Singapore. And I lost a notebook that had a lot of stuff in it. And I was just I'm still sad about it. It's like 10 years already, but I'm still sad because it had so much of my thinking and it's just gone. Yeah. And also, I had a blog on a very, like a mom and pop kind of small blog provider called Diary X. It's a pretty great service, but it's like run by one guy, I think. And he had some server crash, some physical, like some very unlikely and terrible accident that ruined his servers. And so like all of our blogs got wiped out. And that was like my blogging from when I was about 12 to maybe even earlier, maybe even like 10, 11. No, like 12. From about 12 to 17, like there's a black hole where my writing was. And I'm so depressed about that because I can go and look at my blog posts from when I was 17 or 18 and I can get insight into my own psychology. And there was also blog posts older than that, but I can't find those because they're gone. Yeah. And so I just have this great grief, I would say, is that I'm so sad that I lost all of that material. And in parallel to that, when I look at my teenage years, there was a lot of, I was struggling to do what was expected of me by my parents and by my teachers and myself as an extension of that. I'm like, why don't I study? Why am I not studying in school? Why am I not working hard? Why am I not, why isn't my life just amazing? Why am I not doing what I know I should do or want to do? Like, what's going on? I want to understand. And so I had made all these attempts, and I was convinced at some point that, my memory sucks. I can't remember stuff. I didn't have a language for ADHD then, but I'm so scatterbrained. I'm all over the place. I can never follow up on anything. So I figured that, okay, like I should at least keep meticulous logs of my stuff. That way, even if I can't figure stuff out now, I'll be able to figure stuff out later. Right. And I think I used to read biographies and histories, and it's just kind of obvious to me that writing stuff down is powerful, right? And I wanted that self-knowledge, knowledge is power, blah, blah, blah. And yeah, so and I would have conversations with friends, and then I would be like, oh, that was a really good conversation, and I wish I could share this conversation with this friend with another friend, which is something you can do on Twitter. So you
Mm-hmm.
reply with someone on Twitter, and if it's a
Mm-hmm.
good conversation, you can share that tweet with everyone
Yeah.
else, and that's just mind blowing to me, right? So
Yeah.
it's all of these angles that just, I think, any one of those things is like cool, but I think when you add all of them up, it leads to me being this obsessive, tweeting a lot, keeping track of all of my tweets,
Yeah.
threading, sharing, intertwining, blah blah blah. But
Yeah.
if Twitter disappeared tomorrow, I would still be doing this somewhere else. I'll be doing it on my blog or YouTube,
Yeah.
TikTok, Reddit, wherever. It's just I need this and there are a few writers from history who have said similar things. It's like writing is how we make sense of ourselves and how we
Mm.
situate ourselves in history
Mm.
and in the world, with national identity, like all of our, like
Mm.
we figure ourselves out. There's this quote from someone who was a refugee who said that when without a homeland, writing becomes a place to be. It's where you
Mm.
articulate who you are, what your history is, what's meaningful to you. Otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
you feel, and it's so difficult to, once you have it, it's such a privilege, in a way. And there's people, there are like jokes or whatever that's like, I think it's a Peanuts comic where Linus is saying like, my library card is my passport to the country of knowledge, something like that, like my
Mm.
citizenship to. And I think that's beautiful. I think it's like across space and time, different nationalities, authors, just from even
Mm-hmm.
ancient Greeks or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and you feel this bond across everyone.
Cross
And
time.
yeah, I think growing up, I felt like a lonely misfit alien, and I think reading and writing helped me connect with history and feel like I belong in the world.
Yeah.
And that's just a very precious feeling. And having learned how to navigate that, and nobody taught me directly. I guess I had like one good teacher who was nice to me. I had like, like it should have been much more. I wish I had an uncle Visa who literally kind of,
Mm.
hey, let me show you. I had to really trial
Yeah.
and error it myself. And so I try to be that uncle for
For other
anyone who
people.
wants it. Yeah.
Yeah. And you do an awesome job at it.
Ah,
Because
thank you.
no, you're welcome. You're reminding me, like I remember going to college, and when I went to college, actually, and I had my wrist injury, because I was studying to be a musician. Then I had a wrist injury that made me
Oh,
shift
yikes.
careers. And even though I finished the course and I still play guitar, I remember spending a lot of time that I used I in my first year in college, I would spend like 7 to 8 hours practicing. And when I had the wrist injury, I had to spend like 7, 8 hours doing nothing. So that was really, really hard for a kid that was growing up. So I would go to the public library, actually, in the town where I was studying, and I would just hang out with books. And that, so I totally understand the feeling that you're talking about. So I knew that you were blogging for a long time, but I had no idea that you had started as early as 12. Like, and my question is, I, like you said it before, you have like this very thoughtful and deep relationship with the internet and what it allows. Uh, but did you had like any fears when you're starting to write as 12? Like, because most people that want to even start to write online, regardless of their age, most of them start by having this fear of, oh, I can't write because other people will judge me, and what if someone find out what I'm writing? Like, you had that as early as 12, or you just didn't care and just wrote
Yeah, I
whatever
think so.
comes to
I
mind?
I think for me, this is where being a minority comes in. Like, I'm so used to people assuming things about me, or
Mm,
just saying shit about me. So it's like, yeah, so I can't really help someone who is afraid. Well, I can try, right? I can say things that are like comforting and supportive. But like the truth is, what a lot of people are afraid of, I kind of just was exposed to it from the beginning. Like I'm
mm,
used to people judging me already. I'm used to people assuming, oh, that guy, he must surely be XYZ. And so I've always felt that and like being a big brown man, like I just feel like like I only realized this fairly recently, like around 2000 and like 19 or so. Like when I was a teenager, I did not realize I couldn't put words to it, but like I was afraid to travel implicitly because I wouldn't say I'm afraid to travel. I'll just be like, travel, so troublesome, who cares? But I think I was afraid that suppose I go to London or the US, somewhere, just by
Mm.
myself, right? And I'm at a bar or I'm at somewhere and some shit happens and someone, accuses me of something, like I would be afraid that, people will not take my side because he's an outsider. He looks
Mm.
like a bad guy or whatever. And that changed in part because of my Twitter following and friend. Like, so now I have the privilege of knowing that anywhere I am in the world, I have like friends in every major city who, or these people who care about me that I can reach out to, who
Mm-hmm.
can kind of vouch for me and show me around. And so yeah, the problem of worrying about being, and I mean now I'm not even worried about that much anymore, but it was a thing that I worried about. And I'm
Mm.
sorry, but I got sidetracked a little bit.
No,
You were
that's
asking
fine.
about worrying about
Cause
judgment. Yeah, I
yeah,
I
yeah.
just felt like people were already judging me regardless of what I said. And so I wanted to get ahead of the narrative
Mm.
in a sense, right? So like,
Mm.
and my wife and I talk about this a lot because she um also, like, we both so she's also a minority, but like, so she's much lighter than me, and then there's this a lot of different dimensions to it, right? Being male, being female,
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But like, she it's I don't want to tell her story because that's her story to tell, but
Yeah.
like, she used to feel that the best way to protect yourself is through like anonymity, like not
Mm.
letting people know who you are, where
Mm.
you're from, what's your location. And that's very understandable for women especially, right? Like, you don't want some creepy guy to know where you live. Whereas in
Mm.
my case, like, as me, like, I'm completely fine people knowing where I am because I don't expect
Yeah.
someone to come and creep at me. So that's like a difference of gender or
Yeah.
whatever. But like, my worry is not that people are gonna be mean to me or just threaten me physically, like
Mm-hmm.
directly. My worry is that people will assume that I'm some kind of monster or some kind of
Mm.
bad guy or evil guy or whatever. And
Mm.
so I counteract that by being vulnerable, by being an art. And when I was a teenager, like, playing music did that for me. Like, being on stage and singing and writing songs and being able to express strong feelings without, so in Singapore, I think there was this stereotype of like the Indian man as like an angry drunk,
Mm.
beats his wife, that kind of stereotype, like
Mm.
a little bit similar to the US kind of angry black man,
Yeah.
violent, aggressive kind of.
Yeah.
It's not the same, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
roughly similar, right? And so I always began with the assumption that people already say shit about me, and so
Mm.
I write to counter the narrative in a sense.
Yeah.
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 And now that I'm thinking back, there were milestones and thresholds where my stuff reached a wider audience than I expected it to, but I kind of wanted it a little bit,
Mm.
So like when I was blogging locally, so like when I said 12, like from 12 to 17, I was blogging, but it's like I only expected my close friends to see it, because I'm just some
Mm.
kid. But
Mm-hmm.
around 17 or so, I found like this local Singaporean live journal community and other stuff. And I realized, oh, you can write for your country, right? And
Mm.
have your countrymen kind of receive your perspectives. And so I started doing that. And so I kind of stepped into that role a little bit of like a cultural commentator, like, oh, Singapore, why are we so, like, can we be more kind? Can we be less like
Mm-hmm.
money minded and less materialistic, blah blah blah. And it worked, and I got a bunch of attention and a bunch of people assuming things about me that were not true. But
Mm.
by that point, I had so much experience. I've always been, like, so I've written some things that, having written it, I realized that I did not understand other people. And I was like, so I wrote, when I was 20, I wrote a blog post called How to Save Singapore. It's a horrible
Mm.
blog post. It's very arrogant, presumptuous, uh, just bad. Like, I read it again,
Yeah.
I cringe. Like, the thing is, when I read it, I can see that, oh, this kid means well, but he
Yeah.
just doesn't know how to talk to people. He's ignorant. He's a child. He doesn't know how to fuck he's
Yeah.
doing. And all the comments were like, who the fuck are you? You're full of shit. You don't know what you're saying. You're being arrogant by telling other people how they should act. And I
Yeah.
read it, I'm like, that's not what I meant though. So I get that I understand why you see what you see, but that's not
Mm-hmm.
what I meant.
Mm-hmm.
So what seems obvious to me is that, okay, I need to get better at expressing myself. I
Mm-hmm.
make some missteps, but I need to correct it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and not everyone seems to extract that same lesson from that
Mm-hmm.
experience. And to be fair, I won't claim to have like this abundance mindset in everything about my life. I think there are things that were like, I used to be a picky eater, and it took me a long time to not flinch from the kitchen or flinch from food. Like I used to be like,
Mm-hmm.
I can't, like and like even now, I think with calendars and schedules and timetables and stuff, like I associate that with it's like school. I can't stand it. I don't
Yeah.
wanna. I just like I didn't think, oh, I'm just doing it wrong. I got to do it better.
Yeah.
Intellectually, when I'm talking to you about it, I'm like, oh yeah, it should be the same thing. But emotionally, it's like
That's
I don't wanna look at my calendar. It causes me pain to look at my calendar.
yeah.
Whereas when people misunderstand me, I really truly feel compelled to try and help them try and
Mhm.
correct things. Let's try this again. Let's try this again. Like, I'm willing to redo it again and again until I get it right. And I
Yeah.
guess maybe part of that might have been that I grew up reading so many books, and
Mm.
there were so many authors who were so articulate and so beautiful. And I'm like, okay, I am not, Tolstoy or just whatever great writer. I'm not
Mhm.
there yet. And if I could write that beautifully, I'm sure you would see my point of view. But
Yeah.
I can't yet. But I'm gonna try. And yeah, so I guess maybe it's a sense of participating in that tradition. It's interesting. I'm glad you asked me this, because I don't know if I've connected these particular dots for myself before.
Mm.
That um and I always just wanted friends, so it's like
Yeah.
I've always just felt lonely, and like walking away from people does not make me less lonely. In fact, I would say that when I was a teenager, I was so needy to be liked and so needy for people to accept me and whatever, that I would get I did not yet have the nuance of some people are going to get you and some people are not. And there's no
Mm.
point kind of persisting with people who don't get you. And
Mm.
so I did kind of fall into that trap of, there's some people don't like you, and they are just say, leave me alone, fuck off, whatever. And that's I respect that. That's so great of them to draw their boundaries and leave you alone.
Mm.
But there's this other group of people who they don't like you, but they enjoy kind of fucking with you and toying with you. And so they'll ask
Mm.
you to explain yourself, but they're not really
Mm.
listening, and they're kind of
Mm.
mocking you on the side. And then you think that you're getting through to them, but you're not.
Somewhere when you're not. Yeah.
Yeah. But even then, so that's kind of in the moment. But if you zoom
Mm-hmm.
out and you see the big picture, and again, if you read history and all of these things, sometimes I found being earnest with someone who is kind of making fun of you or not taking you seriously or whatever, like you might not persuade them in the moment, but if you know in your heart that you're going to continue doing what you're doing, and like you can
Mm-hmm.
follow up next 1 year later, 5 years later, 10 years, 20 years later, and you're still doing what you love,
Mm-hmm.
it wears down like 98%, 99% of people. They realize
Mm-hmm.
that they thought you were just putting on an act. And
Yeah.
so from their point of view, like, oh, I'm going to make fun of the guy who's putting on an act. But when they
Yeah.
see 10, 20 years later that you're serious, that changes things for a lot of people. But even
Yeah.
then, you can never please anyone. There's all, even take anybody in history that you admire, and they had haters. It's
Of course.
unescapable. Even Jesus,
Yeah.
or like whoever, everyone made people upset. So
Yeah.
you do the best you can for the people
And
that you care about.
yeah, so one of the things that I always associated with you is this precisely this long-term thinking. Like, you're someone is making fun of me. I know I'll keep doing this, and then in a year later, 5 years later, 20 years later, I'll follow up, and they'll understand that I kept doing this. So when did you start to think like embracing this long-term thinking instead of short-term?
Good question. Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
was there a particular moment in your life where
That is a good question. When did I start? Well, I would say first of all, I've always just thought longer term in general. So even when I was a child, I was reading about like ancient civilizations
mm,
and ancient Greeks and Egyptians, and it's just just knowledge of that there were people thousands of years
yeah,
ago, very similar to us, who had different religions, different ways
mm,
of life, but and they're not around anymore. And like we are no like just having that long view of thousands of years, I think automatically tends you so maybe from the very beginning, like, so even reading
Mm,
like biographies
mm,
of people's lives, just so I've always been, but I think there's a slight, there's something here anyway to think about, which is that there must have been moments where things became clearer for me. I don't know if there was like any one kind of
mm. Yeah.
critical moment. I think it's really just slow and steady over time. Um, like, yeah, blogging about politics and seeing elections. I don't know. That's participating in my local music scene as well. I think like witnessing that there's all this drama that happens about who's performing at what gig, who's first position, last position, like the set list, like, oh, we don't want to play first, we don't want to play last,
Mm,
and I was just like, does it really matter? And I saw for myself that a bunch of people who are arguing about who gets to play first, it doesn't matter because a year from now, like half the bands are not even around anymore. And so the best way to get better position is to just keep playing and
mm.
be around next year. And
Yeah.
like half your competitors won't even be around anymore.
Yeah.
And when I saw that, I'm like, oh, okay. So the most important question I should be asking myself if I'm playing in a band is, how do I make sure that my band is still around next year?
Yeah. Showing
As
up,
opposed
right?
to, yeah, so show up, don't die, don't quit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And people spend all that you and it's the same with the Doors thing again, right? It's like I see people focused on how do I get into a better position for this play, for this round
Mhm.
of game, but and I'm reminded of quotes that's like people saying, like trophies are won in the practice room. Like, what I mean? It's
Mm,
like people watch the NBA match and they're like, ooh, that guy, he managed to intercept that guy, is so good. But if you look at the championship trophies, right? If you look at whether it's
yeah.
football or whatever, like I think Alex Ferguson had a quote that's like, again, trophies are won by getting people to show up for training every day and
Yeah.
practice their drills and be healthy, eat, exercise, avoid injury. Like, it's boring, but
Yeah.
that's how you win championships. It's not how like a few minutes of play, like you can have some impressive play, something unexpected or whatever. But like when a championship is won or lost by 100, like with 60 games or whatever, like it's really
Hmm.
you just yeah. So I guess I was just, maybe I lost at some, I don't know if I specifically lost at something, or I witnessed. I think local music stuff influenced me. I think local politics stuff influenced me. Like yeah, I had some drama. I don't know if it's a big drama, but I guess I just remember like arguing with my friends and my peers when I was
Mm,
like 17 or 18, and we're just talking about, what does success mean? What is, just guys arguing about
hmm.
nonsense, like which thing is better, or I don't even know the
Yeah.
specifics anymore. But like it at some point it just became like I could no longer deny the of what became obvious, which is that you win by just outlasting the competition, like
Yeah.
99% of the time. It's like, sometimes you have these cools, like, okay, like you take someone like Jimi Hendrix, who's like was amazing for a few years and then he died, and it's so tragic. And it's true that maybe if he hadn't died, like he wouldn't have been so legendary. But I would
Hmm.
rather have lived in a world where Hendrix is an 80-year-old guy right now
Yeah.
and he's
Absolutely.
still making music. And like, yeah, so it's just, don't die.
Yeah.
Like, don't die, don't quit. And yeah,
Sure.
it's just, I guess it's really studying lots and lots of stories of people trying to be creative, people trying to do anything significant, and seeing things fail,
Yeah.
seeing things collapse, seeing people's relationships, divorce, like all of these things. And then I'm just evaluating like what do I know? How do things work? What's going on? And then and so eventually I just converged on like just really the sense of people get distracted by the short term. And same for, even like markets. Like I bought some Bitcoin in like 2015. It's like before. I wish I bought like I could have had a chance to buy, but whatever. Like, you can't change the past. But
Yeah.
then I'm just holding. And like now there's stuff crashing. And I'm just holding. I'm just like,
Yeah.
but again, because I just know like let's just see it in 10 years, like if you're willing to hold things for 10 years when you buy them, it's so much less stressful. And it's not, I'm
Yeah.
not just talking about money, but like
Yeah,
You know,
with
like, so I
everything.
know, yeah, I know that music gives me joy. I
Hmm.
might not be practicing music every single day, but I know that
Hmm.
as an old man in my nursing home or whatever, I'm gonna like to strum and play with my friends. So
Yeah,
it's like having that knowledge is gives me peace, right? So it's like,
yeah,
yeah, so it's like when you read like biographies of people and you see decades of life, you really see that it's really the simplest fundamentals over a long period of time. They make all the
yeah.
difference. You know, it's like
And
conversations with friends, and yeah,
and and that, sorry to interrupt, but I think that that connects beautifully with the idea that you have. That, so I was listening to a podcast of you in with the guys from, I think it's Idea Market, and you were
mhm,
talking about how like we tend to overvalue this genius idea, right? Like that specific moment where people just make that awesome goal or that awesome move, and we forget
mhm,
to think about all that long-term practice that led to that moment.
yeah,
Like, once again, championships are won in the training, or trophies are won in the training. So, and I can't help but notice that there's a connection here, right? Like, there's a connection between thinking long-term about your goals, but also not valuing, like, no, not, it's not valuing, it's understanding that you'll need to practice a lot to get into a goal, in order to achieve a certain state, right? And
yeah.
so, one of the things that I really enjoyed, was, I followed you because of your thinking. I enjoyed your tweets, and then there was a moment where I saw a video of you playing the guitar. And I had no idea that you played music, and that made me like you even more. So,
Oh,
I do have, like, I associate you with a specific musician, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But first, I want to understand, like, what did, besides what you already mentioned, like, what did music and the guitar taught you? Because I remember that when I switched careers, because when I had the wrist injury, I then started to pursue another question that I had, which was like, how can we maximize human potential, and all that stuff. And when I switched into that area, a lot of people ask me, how do you feel about wasting 9 years of your life studying to be a musician? And that's the most common asked question that I had. And I always have to explain, that's not what happened. Like, I learned so much being a musician. And one of the things that I really enjoyed was, so I studied jazz, and I spent years and years and years crafting the heart of improvisation. And that thing in music, like improvisation, is a meta skill that I can use in all these different contexts. And so I would explain to people, like, I had to learn that in order to make my learning experiences and my workshops and my training sessions the level that they are. So that was, to me, one of the most important questions, one of the most important issues that I've learned, as long as listening skills and all that stuff. So, what are some of those to you, and to your relationship with music?
yeah. And even before that, you know, when I hear something like, "Oh, you spend 9 years on a thing and you're not doing something with it," it's like that seems like a waste. Like that's really it's a failure of imagination. You know, it's people really
Absolutely.
have this narrow view of
Framework.
how things are. Like you really never know, like unless like yeah, the things that you learn in some domain you can't know how you will end up using it in some other context. Like it's always possible. Anyway, so you asked about music. I wasn't from like a musical family. I didn't grow up playing an instrument. Nobody in my family is like very like my mom has her favorites. My mom likes like Bee Gees and Carpenters and ABBA, and my dad likes like old Indian Tamil songs and stuff. But neither of them sing, and it's there's none of that. So for me, I remember, and I vaguely remember liking like Michael Jackson a little bit, Who Did It
Mm.
on TV. But for me, it kind of started when I was a teenager, and I think around maybe puberty. Puberty might have been when it started. Like again, like adults forget, but puberty is a very stressful and confusing and overwhelming time with a lot of emotions. And music, I think I remember watching MTV, and it's like I was very into Avril Lavigne, and it's just hearing people express feelings, right? So
Yeah.
I think again, like, and especially for men, I think like music is a way for men to express feelings in a way that doesn't get dismissed as feminine, effeminate, or just weak or whatever, right? So you can
Okay.
go on, like I had a friend who was tweeting, "I want to kill myself, I hate my life, whatever." And then all his friends replied like, "Are you okay? It's so worrisome." And then he told me, I just wanted to say the words, man. I don't want this big thing." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, then you should put it in a song." You know,
Yeah.
when you say it in conversation, people worry about you.
Yeah.
But if you put it as "I wanna kill myself," you know, whatever, like whatever, however you wanna do
Yeah.
it, people see that as a performance. They see that you're not just like, yeah, you're spilling your guts and feelings, but you're
Yeah.
doing it in a container, and that container gives people
A
um
different frame.
yeah, exactly. By framing
Totally.
it, you
Yeah.
show that you have peace of mind. And what we know is that some musicians don't actually have
Don't.
peace of mind.
Yeah.
Like it's a, you know, you watch their work and you're like, "Are you okay?" And like, you know, they're
Yeah.
not okay. But you
Yeah.
know, at least as an interface for relating to other people, like
Yeah.
music, art, movies, film, you know, all the arts, they're painting. It's a way
Yeah.
of expressing the intensity of your emotion without, while having a bit of separation from like your daily persona, right? And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very helpful. And also there were a group of guys in my school who were playing guitar. I just thought they were super cool, so I wanted to hang out with
Mm.
them, you know.
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, and so they were into like metal, and I think I became more of a hard rock and blues sort of.
Yeah.
But it's really fundamentally it's about emotion. I think, you know, music is really, it's about emotional. There's this great quote I found from Carl Polnack of the Boston Conservatory, and I
Mm.
loved it so much. I gave like a speech about it in junior college, like this about just the value of music in helping people uh, navigate their interior selves. And
Mm.
you know, like, so Carl says things like, you know, when people cry at a wedding, it's usually when the music starts, right? It's like,
Yeah.
and it's just, we use song to regulate our emotions, right? We like when 9/11 happened, or when tragedy happens, like we rely on the people singing to grieve or to celebrate. And it's just yeah, I think that ability to express emotion, to regulate emotion, to communicate and commune with people, right? So I have a tweet somewhere about how again, like the local music scene for me felt like it was my church. You know, it was my sweaty and noisy and but it was so raw and real, and people sharing their feelings and people headbanging, and it's just, you feel the
Yeah.
crowd. It's just, it was it felt very real. And like in Singapore at the time, it just, you know, like going to school felt fake as shit. So it
Mm.
was my oasis of realness in the desert of the
Yeah.
unreal, in a sense.
Yeah.
And yeah, I still carry that with me, even if I'm not playing in a band right now. Like I will always, and I learned so much, you know, like writing songs, finding bandmates. I actually have a draft of an essay of a novel that I wrote in
Mm.
2017. It's called Make Some Noise. So like my debut
Mm.
novel is about a group of musicians finding family in each other and then dealing with the conflicts that emerge
Yeah.
subsequently. Because it you know, like when you're alone and you feel like you don't have anyone for you, that sucks. But then when you find people who seem like your family and then you don't get along, that sucks in a different way, and it can suck
Yeah.
worse because now you feel like, oh, am I broken that I can't even
Yeah.
be, you know, with the, but no, it's not. It's just painful and complex. Like just
Yeah.
relating to people is challenging. But yeah, you know, music, and so it's about emotion, it's about expression, it's about communication, communing. It's just, it's a universal language, right? I remember
Absolutely.
there's this video of I was about maybe 17 or 18, and there's this video on YouTube of musicians from all over the world playing Stand By Me. And they have
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, they get people like this tribal circle in like Native Americans, and there's
Mm-hmm.
like this Russian guy, and just all over the world, they're all kind
Yeah.
of recording different parts and playing. And I remember crying while watching that video, and my parents are like, you should study, you should whatever. And I'm like, I would give my life for musicians. You know, I mean it when I say that, because
Mm.
they demonstrate to me that communion is possible,
Yeah.
that we can, even if we don't understand each other's words, right, we can feel
Yeah.
each other, right? And that possibility, I think Nietzsche said, without music life would be a mistake. I
Yeah.
agree. It's just really
Absolutely.
right. So
'Cause-
yeah.
Yeah. And it's this way. to connect. Like I remember, I sometimes when I give people would invite me to go to schools to share my story, and I would say that it's cheesy, but it's true. Like language was the music that I knew where I could express myself and actually inspire other people. Like to me, the feeling of playing a live show and or doing a music or playing music, and then in the end someone coming along and said, look, I really enjoyed that music, or I really enjoyed that solo, that make the world, right? Because and especially when you're playing like because playing, there's, to me there was a different vibe for between playing like a song that you wrote, like which has words, and then playing like only instrumental music, and it allows for the expression of different feelings in different ways. But like one of the things that I said before, I associate you with a specific musician, which is Miles Davis. Do you know Miles?
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I'm
big
not sure
fan.
how perfect. I'm not sure how familiarized you are with his life, but one of the things that Miles did was he was basically this like I forget about the word but like this lighthouse where it, he would be able to bring people together that were very very talented and create groups around it, and everyone
Mhm.
knew that being around Miles was being around different people with different backgrounds, with different approaches to music, but all of them connected not only by talent but by uh, some kind of love uh, for music and experimentation. And like to me, from not from the moment that I met you, but as I was as I get familiarized with you in with your work, I quickly realized that to me you're like this Miles Davis of friendly, ambitious nerds. Like everyone around you, like not maybe not everyone, but it's really easy to get along with people that follow you or that you know, because you know they all share a bunch of different things. And that's why in the 9 previous episodes you were mentioning all of them, because you were like everyone knew Visa because of that. And so I was wondering, like, first of all, do you agree with this? And if so, like, was that a goal that you craft, or it was something that just happened?
Yeah, that's definitely, so it's very cool that, so you don't seem to know that I have actually written threads about Miles Davis
Oh,
and
I didn't.
explicitly saying that I want to be like Miles Davis in some ways. You know,
Awesome. Sorry.
the other guy that I mean, it's cooler that you came up to this independently without seeing the threads, right?
Yeah.
Because you know, another person that I feel sort of fits the bill. So not so much as a band leader the way Miles was, but like more broadly as a producer is Quincy Jones. So
Yeah. Absolutely.
Quincy Jones is another guy who's like this one man nexus of creative talent. Like this,
Yeah.
he just keeps spotting talent all the time. He
Yeah.
spotted, like, you could make a video that's like 10 minutes long, and it would be there's a whole documentary about him. But like I would say that it would be even more powerful if they compress the whole documentary into everyone who has been discovered by Quincy Jones, saying, so Oprah was discovered by him. Like just there's so many,
Yeah.
like you could make like just people saying, oh, Quincy Jones, Quincy Jones, Quincy Jones. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And you know, and what I think both Quincy and Miles did is that they really just care about music, and
Mm,
they care about identifying talent and encouraging it.
mm,
There's this great quote from someone else from the Miles Davis documentary. I can't remember which person. His, I don't know, his drummer. One of his band guys was saying
mm.
that you know, he said that I pay you to practice
Yeah.
on the bandstand, right? Like to make your
Yeah.
mistakes on live and fix them there. Like don't
Yeah.
prepare some pre-existing. He said like every night was like a laboratory of you know, slightly dangerous,
Yeah.
trying to
I think
control the explosion.
I think it was
Have you watched the
Herbie
same?
Hancock.
Mhm.
Uh,
I don't. I know that
because
Herbie also has great quotes about Miles, but like
yeah.
the person I'm thinking of is slightly different. But yeah, it's just
Okay.
that crew, and it's just so interesting to me what he was capable of, and how rare it is that someone. And so part of what he says was, and then people said, "Oh, then the musician says, oh, the public won't like that very much, that we are fucking around on
Yeah.
stage making mistakes." And Herbie's and Miles says, "You don't worry about the public. I'll take care of the public. You just play." You
Yeah.
know, I love that phrase, and I
Yeah.
feel like that is what a good leader is supposed to do. They are the interface, a good manager. They are the interface between their team and outward reality. And, they stubbornly advocate. They have a vision, first of all, for what they think good music or a good product or a good anything is. They have a vision, and then they recruit the best possible people they can find. They encourage them and say, do your best, impress each other, don't bullshit, don't fuck around, don't as in, like, it's like you fuck around but you don't fuck around, right? Like, you screw around at the edge of what is possible, but you don't give me like your cookie cutter bland, and I'm reminded now of, like, Louis C.K. said this about George Carlin as well. Like, so as someone who's successful, just throw out all your crap and start new, be fresh, surprise and amaze me. So that's leadership, right? And he never settled, and I always quote Steve Jobs talking about Bob Dylan, but it applies to Miles Davis as well. Like, Jobs was saying that, any artist, once they succeed, they can basically become, like, and my paraphrase is, they can become a tribute act to themselves, right? It's like, your first album was great. You spend the rest of your career replaying your first album because everyone wants to see your first album. And, it was a good album, but now you're like a tribute band to yourself. And so it's like, you're outwardly successful. You keep making more and more money, but you're not innovating. You're not risking failure. You're not trying new, crazy, exciting things. You're not. And like, if you look at Miles Davis's discography, right? Like he starts out with some stuff. You get to like Bitches Brew. It's just crazy, completely different. And if he lived longer, that he would have continued to innovate, doing more strange, crazy things. And again, if only he lived longer, right? But while the individual died, sadly, the spirit and the insight and the perspective, that's still accessible to anybody who wants it. You can study his career, reverse engineer how he did what he did, and apply it to your own domain. You don't necessarily need to be a trumpet player, right? Like, because everybody is a ringleader, band leader in their own context in some way. You can organize house parties. It doesn't even need to be music. It can be anything. It can be Twitter, right? It can be whatever. And I'm always, I think when you have a genuine love for the craft, right, that helps you go past the egotism of, like, I want to be, the king of this. Like, I want to be celebrated, and even saying the word king, right? So I have a lot to say about kings in the concept of like the archetype of kings, right? So the job of the king, so in this case of Miles Davis or any leader, right? The job of the leader is to receive the eyes and attention of everybody who is and ideally is consenting. So some complexity there about like
a king being
conquest. But like, just imagine, like, what's an example of a good king, a good leader? It's like, you wear the crown, but the crown is not to glorify you. The crown is a representation of the collective attention. It's the people. Like, you are a human being and you are wearing the crown that represents the people, and your job is to direct the attention of so you're like an attention allocator, right? You're a prestige and status allocator. And what shitty kings do is they're like, I'm the king, glorify me, celebrate me, make me whatever. But like, if you see like in Lord of the Rings, right, in Return of the King, Aragorn directs everyone. He bows to the hobbits and he directs everyone. So it's like, you bow to no one, right? And that act of directing attention, it elevates the whole kingdom, right? It benefits everyone. And same for, so like people like Miles Davis and Quincy Jones, they're always looking for new talent and they're always encouraging and supporting new talent. And that serves the whole realm. It's not selfish and being like, get a load of me. It's like, how can I advance the state of music and advance the state of whatever it is? And it's a pleasure, it's how you, so one of my things I say is like, stop trying. So this is a quote from David Ogilvy. He says, strive for the company of immortals. So don't just try to impress your friends. Like, cool, impress your friends, whatever. But like, dream bigger, play for all of history. Play for Valhalla, I can impress my friends. It's not weird. None of us are a big deal. But like, if you do great work, right? This gets back to golden age shit. There is no doubt that the age of Athens in time of Pericles, everybody there was doing amazing shit. Like it was just
Yeah.
Socrates, Plato, all of that, all the playwrights and stuff. And there's no doubt that the golden age of Baghdad, where they invented algebra and chemistry, like holy shit, they were advancing the world for all of humanity, right? And then you go to like Shakespeare's London, and there's all that crazy shit that's happening, and
Yeah.
Renaissance Florence. Like there are like these 4 or 5 things where it's like it's very very clear that like so in my shorthand when I'm explaining this to my friends, I'm like, those people were, and again, I'm not religious per se, but like succinctly, I said those people were glorifying God,
Mm-hmm.
glorifying whatever the word you want to use. They were serving humanity. They were
Yeah.
the light of human consciousness was flourishing in their custodianship. They were
Mm-hmm.
truly, they were not. They were impressing their friends, sure, but they were doing stuff for the ages, for all
Yeah.
of time. And what a wonderful way to live. Like if you
Yeah.
can not just make your friends happy, but serve all of humanity. And my wish is that, and so I would say Miles Davis, in a way, he did that. He did his version of that.
Yeah.
And some things are debatable. Like people are like, oh, was you take something that's kind of, but while some things are debatable, some things just become so obvious that nobody debates it.
Yeah.
And my wish for my friends and my peers and for just this moment in history is, can we make, so like, can we make Twitter right now
Mm.
um, flourish? So, and again, like we can't save or we can't help all of Twitter,
All
but like,
Twitter.
can we put together a team of in a team in a scene, right? A scene of
Mm-hmm.
500 people who are just so talented and so clever and challenging and uplifting each other,
Mm-hmm.
such that 50 years from now, people will point back and say, holy shit, 2022 Twitter, man, that was the place to be. That was the
Yeah.
same way we talk about, wow, can you believe that C.S. Lewis was writing The Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe at the same time that Tolkien was writing Lord of the Rings? Can you imagine being
Yeah.
in the bar where they were having conversations and you were one of their mutuals just hanging out?
Yeah.
We can do that,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just want to me, this is like opening the doors, it's really
Mm-hmm.
just raising everyone's aspirations and just making it so like it's possible, it's accessible to us, and it's a
Yeah.
way to, a lot, I hear people say things like, there's a meaning crisis, life doesn't, like we've explored all of the earth and we haven't yet started exploring the stars and probably too young to explore the stars. I'm like, sure, but like you can, we have the internet, we have Twitter, we have Wikipedia, we have YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
and while I would say my long game is to try and incentivize and encourage golden age scenes in our lifetime, while doing my research, I almost wonder if in some senses it already exists and
Yeah.
we're just not seeing it, not appreciating it, right? And
Yeah.
then, so which is great, because that makes our job easier, because we don't have to invent Wikipedia and we don't have to invent YouTube. They already exist, and
Yeah.
people are, but not everyone sees how wonderful they are, so we have to teach people how to appreciate how wonderful these things are. And appreciation has to be taught, like Da Vinci, for example. So there was this guy called Vasari. I don't know if that's correct pronunciation. And he wrote histories of the artists around that
Mm.
time. And it's like, it's kind of surprising to me, but like people don't appreciate greatness until someone teaches them how to appreciate it. Because greatness is a bit weird. Greatness is
Yeah.
like, it's a little bit surprising, a little bit uncomfortable. A lot of the best albums in music, when they were released, the reviews were not that great, because people are like, what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck is this? And
Yeah.
it's like 10
Yeah.
years later. So it's like you need very discerning observers. So we need everyone to pitch in and to contribute towards this endeavor of making great things and appreciating great things and inviting more and more people to join.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just
And
it. Yeah.
yeah, and because you mentioned like I when I started the podcast, it took me a lot a long time to start because I had this idea that I had to have like this perfect clear vision of what a
Mm.
modern golden age looked like, and so
Mm.
I delayed and delayed and delayed, and then there was a moment where I realized this doesn't make any sense. I need who am I to say what a modern golden age looks like? What I need is I need to talk with people and try to understand what are common pinpoints, and maybe then craft like this vision of what it is. And as I was going, and I'm actually writing an essay on this with the main lessons that I've learned throughout these 10 episodes. And one of the things that I've realized is that in some sense, we're already on a modern golden age, and we don't need to build one. We need to build the worldview that allows for people to notice that we're already living it. And so it makes total sense what you were saying. And like, I guess that one of my questions is, and you kind of answer it, but I'll give you like the space to clarify it if you want. Like, how would you define this concept, like the modern golden age? What does it look like to you?
That's a good. How do I? So okay, I know that the concept of a golden age is itself contentious, and people will disagree and whatever. But like, I just what I'm looking to see and what I think can be done is to just accelerate the creation of new content. If framing and content in the terms of content seems to be a bit fraught. Sorry, can you repeat your question? How do
Yeah,
I define a golden age?
yeah, modern golden age.
Um, so it should. So the thing is, we might not be able to see it in our lifetime. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we will know in our lifetime that we're living it when we're living it.
Mm.
But I think that so again, you can look back to history for periods of time where things happened a lot. So like there was a period of time in the late 1800s, so before World War One and the Great Depression and all that. There was a period of time where it just seemed like like 1860s to 1890s. It seemed like magic. Cameras were being invented, railroads were being invented. Just the world was changing really fast. A lot of just it seemed like everything was going to get solved. And
Mm-hmm.
turns out that there's complications. And one of the difficult things about living in the 21st century is we don't have the luxury of living of what the 19th and 20th, no, 19th century. Yeah, so the 20th century had some big colossal fuck ups, right?
Yeah.
And we live in the shadow of that. And our predecessors before that didn't quite have that. So they were really like, oh, we are going to understand the human mind and we're going to solve everything. We're going to find out everything and we're going to solve everything. And now we know, like, okay, that's fucking stupid to say, right? So so it's like it's a pendulum, right, between like knowledge and despair and all of those things.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we should be ignorant again. We should be aware of things that go bad. But I just want to see. I want to bring together all the optimistic people. I want to bring together artists, scientists, people who create stuff, people who are encouraging and supportive. All those people exist, but they don't seem to like the vision that I have is that, I kind of wish I didn't feel like it was even necessary. I kind of wish that I look up into. So I think a question I've asked people before is like, how come we are not completely overwhelmed with 100 times more of the best of everything? So let's say I want to talk about Elon Musk, right? So people are conflicted. Some people like him, some people hate him. But like my question is, why do we not have 1,000 Elon Musks? And I don't necessarily mean his personality, whether you like his tweets or whatever. I mean, he's someone who and maybe I'm not saying the person, maybe I'm saying the complex, right? So the complex meaning the group of scientists or whatever who made reusable rockets happen. Like if you've seen reusable rocket, like again, when we were kids, right, when we were 10 years old in the 90s, the concept of a rocket going to space and coming back and landing safely and then going up again, sci-fi, it did not seem possible. Yeah. Now, it's happened enough times that it doesn't even make the news. It's just, rockets land again. Yeah, it's fine. That's insane. It's like we don't stop, like, so what's the last thing that was like a reusable rocket? Maybe reusable planes, like when planes used to take off and land, and that was mindfuck blowing to people. Yeah. And I just want to see more of that on every dimension in the arts, in movies, and like, what's a good movie? So I thought everything everywhere all at once was a good movie. Some people might disagree. Sure, fine, whatever. Like just Matrix was a good movie. Like, how do we get
Yeah.
like 100 amazing movies like that in 10 years, right? And then
Mm.
some people will say, "Oh, Visa, actually there are great movies. They're just not Hollywood blockbuster." I'm like, okay, beautiful. Tell me about the like. So
Yeah.
I'm not watching these movies. Maybe, so they're saying like, indie films. There's amazing indie films. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
tell me about it so that I can share this information with everyone else that I
Yeah.
know. And let's elevate the best indie music, the best indie films, the best indie games. I've seen some
Hmm.
jokes. It's like, oh, every AAA video game is like, you're a guy with a gun and you're going around shooting things. But there's all these
Yeah.
other amazing things and I don't know about the details, but I know that there are people who know it. And so
Yeah.
how do we, you know, encourage people to elevate their taste. And one of the ways I framed this before is let's make status games glorious again. So okay, during the golden age of Baghdad, right? One of the things that happened was that the Sultan managed to persuade rich people that the coolest thing that they could do to show off to their friends was to fund astronomers, meaning like
Mm.
and so again, I'm not against rich guys. I
Hmm.
I want all my friends to be rich, like a moderate amount. Like just have enough that you don't care about your bills, you don't need to worry
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
day-to-day life, so you can focus on doing cool shit. But
Yeah.
like to this today, a lot of like if you look at the like oil billionaires or old money, like what do people spend money on? They buy
Yeah.
sports cars, and maybe I'm being like a straw man thing here where I'm
Yeah.
focusing on the worst excesses,
Yeah.
and maybe there are billionaires who are focused on. I mean, there's the other extreme where, I mean, you have like the philanthropy wing, which is very focused on, oh, we must fix malaria, which is great. I'm not against that, right? But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I'm
They're all the
sure,
causes.
right? There's all this money that nobody knows what to do with, and they mostly use it on buying like consumer goods to impress each other, like
Yeah.
yachts and all that stuff. And again, like how do we make it more glorious? How do we make it such that what if billionaires competed for status with each other by funding the most interesting filmmakers? And
Yeah.
then, it's like, oh, you have this, and these filmmakers advance the state of storytelling for all
Mm.
of humanity, right? Which is
Mm.
which is kind of what like the Medicis were doing. They're like trying
Yeah.
to show off, and then they
Yeah.
funded Michelangelo's David, or they funded whoever, like just great art that persists through the centuries. So that's
Hmm.
part of the game that I want to play. I want to make the golden age of the modern times happen. We will be seeing just a dramatic increase in the volume of high quality art, to the point where you're like, oh my god, I don't have time to watch all these amazing movies and TV. So you're like, you watch that, I watch this, let's compare notes, and we're like, holy
Hmm.
shit, everything's amazing. There's that. So it's like innovation. So, and it's happening. You look at robotics, and like you look at like prosthetics these days. Like
Yeah.
people, they're like we are already cyborgs. Which is amazing.
Hmm.
So that's part of that. I think again, so simply pulling all of these things together and getting people to appreciate that. So how many people appreciate this? A million? 10 million? I'm not sure, but like how many of my friends appreciate it?
Yeah.
I feel like it's, like my Twitter friends is like, okay, several thousand. I have 40,000 Twitter followers, but I would say it's like maybe 3 or 4,000 people I get the sense really understand what's happening and what's going on. And I want to make that more accessible to people, so that any ambition. So, okay, I will say that the golden age has been reached, or at least, we're in when anybody with an ambitious idea is immediately able to connect with someone who can fund them or can support them, and nobody feels lonely. So I want to solve loneliness. I feel like loneliness, it makes no sense that we are the most connected in history, and yet people feel alone. And so that's not really a technological problem. It's more of a psychological, storytelling, philosophical problem, like how people conduct themselves in the world, right?
Yeah.
And again, I'm always kind of surprised that this isn't already a solved problem. Like, why have, like, surely people are working on it, and so maybe it's a bit naive of me to try when surely other people have tried before, and clearly they must be running into failure in some ways. And I have my theories for why I think my approach is gonna try. Why I think nobody's done quite what I'm doing, and I think
Yeah.
it's that there is an idiosyncrasy to my process, and a lot of the people who seem to be trying to do what I'm trying to do, they tend to feel compelled to scale, like
Mm,
to try and write a best-selling book to a lot of people, or to try
mm,
and make a YouTube channel that reaches a lot of people. And when you and there's like pressure, and there's like push and pull factors that kind of draw people into that,
yeah.
and it kind of kills the golden goose. I feel, it kind of
Mm-hmm.
it's like imagine if Miles Davis wanted to open like a music academy, and like it's like starts music schools all over the world, and but like you try to scale too fast, and then you
Yeah.
you hire teachers who might you don't take the time to really nourish and nurture them, and so you have too
Mm-hmm.
many teachers, too many classrooms, and
Mm-hmm.
the pressure is to make more money and to profit and to grow fast and
Yeah.
whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, it might not even be to make money. It might really be, I just want to do music education, but you try to grow it so fast that the pressure to grow and the pressure to get
Yeah.
new students and get more teachers, and
It
then you
taints the
go you
process.
go you go to one of these classrooms and you see that, oh, nobody's really enjoying themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's kind of forced, it's kind of joyless. And
Yeah.
I think that it's very important that joy be a part of the process. Like, you have to be enjoying yourself. And I keep seeing examples of people who are like kind of preachy, or kind of trying to inhabit this kind of. And I
Mm.
will consider, I'm kind of a internet street busker slash street preacher kind of guy. I'll
Yeah.
admit, I won't deny that that's what I am.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most important things is, when I do this, I must be enjoying myself. If I'm
Mm.
not enjoying myself, my job is to fuck off until I'm enjoying
Enjoying.
myself again.
Yeah.
Because when you have a preacher who is internally conflicted, and I mean, we're all internally conflicted, but when they're stressed and they're anxious and they feel shitty in some ways, that comes out, and it stresses people out, and it makes
Mm-hmm.
people feel needy, and like they have to live up to not being judged. And that kind of judgment is very unhealthy for just the creative process.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that we can do to scale the modern golden age is actually not you specifically, but other people trying to apply your approach in their own domain. So here's what I mean. I think that one of the things that I think that are unique about you is like what you were saying, like you're not that worried about growing or scaling your different contents really fast. Like you're worried about growing them, of course, I know that, but like in not in a way that compromises the joy and the way you approach things. So for instance, and the truth is, we go to your YouTube channel and we're not seeing like this high production with all these tricks and hacks to make people stay and grow. We're actually seeing a dude that connects his camera and starts talking about it, or even your books. Because I think that I haven't yet found a term that describes both fan and introspect. Because even though they may be considered books, I think your approach to writing that piece of art, let's call it that way, it's not it's what you're saying. Like you could pick up introspect and pick up the main ideas and write a book about it and be published and try to get to Amazon bestseller. But I do believe that's not what you want, and that's why it works. That's why that approach works, right? So if more people with their own domains, with their own pieces of art, like take that approach, it will scale, not like up, but in a horizontal way, and that will allow for more flourishing for that scene. At least
Yeah.
that's my take.
Yeah, I think what just clarified for me that is that it's very, very rare that people are willing to play very long games at a very ambitious scale and be patient and slow about it. So
Yeah.
it's like you have one of like so it's like those three or so variables. Like, a lot of people, so like there's this famous Peter Thiel question where he says, "What's the thing that you want to do in 10 years, and why can't you do it in the next 6 months?" And I
Mm.
actually have an answer to that. I feel that when you try and select for people who are trying to do things very fast, it selects out for certain people, and it selects for certain people. People who are
Yeah.
very, yeah, it's very ambitious, sure, but like human relationships take time to build. Like
Yeah.
careers take time to, and like I don't want. So some people are like, oh, you seem like a cult leader. Like, do you want to move to a compound and have a bunch of followers? I'm like, so the thing that's very important to me is that, so it's almost like an anti-cult. Like, I don't want people to follow me and let's all go somewhere. I would be bored. I want people to be where they are, to
Mm,
contribute to their own respective communities, to
mm,
raise their own families in their own religion, their own philosophy, their own friends and like
mm,
let's have a global network of friends who doesn't pressure each other to move fast and do things. Like
mm,
we have time, we have decades of life,
yeah.
and I want to see people get married and have kids and change careers and say, you know what, I used to love music but now I think I want to get into film. I don't really care so much about movies. I mean,
Yeah.
I still love music, that kind of. I want to see people, somebody start a company and then be like, just thinking long term,
Yeah.
building brands that last 50 years. If you're
Mm,
going to get into, if you're going to start making products or stuff, like there's a lot of, oh, you should raise money to build a company fast and grow fast and scale, and then
skills.
you can sell the company to some other thing for like $10 billion. But why? What was that for? You grow that fast, what is the relationship that your customers have with your product? People are like,
Yeah.
oh, the product, the customer service wasn't very good. It's all, when you try to do things fast,
Yeah.
there's stuff that gets messed up along the way.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to build cultural institutions in the digital age, basically. And what I mean by a cultural institution is like, if you look into the history of like comedy clubs in New York, right? It took like 20 years for comedy as a scene in New York to really flourish.
Mm,
And I find myself complaining about this with Singaporeans sometimes. It's like in Singapore, our country is very well known for, wow, the government is very smart and very efficient. We're too efficient to the point where we don't have cultural institutions.
yeah.
And you need like a restaurant or a cafe or a library or something that's been around for 100 years. When you have that, then that institution transcends, whoever's in the government at the time, whoever's in, it's bigger than
Mm,
any one person's career, any one person's thing. And people love it. It's like a church, right? It's like, it's the
yeah.
idea is there's something beloved and beautiful about that space that demands respect and gives people
Yeah.
something to situate themselves in. And you can't rush these things. That's the thing. I'm really, you can't speed run a cultural institution in a year. Like
Yeah.
it has to be. And even on Twitter, I have friends that I've been tweeting with for probably 10 years by now at this point, or at least 5 years. And so like me and my friend Malcolm, we met in 2015,
Mm,
and we're probably going to meet in real life later this year, maybe. And this,
mm,
I like it. It's like, because we've seen each other do our thing, change careers, change whatever, and there's just an intimacy and a shared knowledge and understanding that comes from just that, having that amount of time. And
mm,
most people, I think, are a bit too impatient. I think culturally, as a species, since, and like, again, convenience is great. Amazon Prime delivers the next day, whatever. Like, all that is amazing. But like, same with people asking you, you spend 9 years on a thing. Like, is
yeah.
that a waste? Like, I want people who realize that you cannot know. In the
Mm,
context of a 80, 90-year life, you cannot know. You can spend 10 years doing something seemingly stupid. Even in music, you learn something. You could do something
yeah.
like, think of something hot. Like, I'm trying to think of what's a really silly thing to do. Like, I don't know, digging holes and filling them back up. Just something like you just can't know, right? I want people
Yeah.
who are humble and curious and
I think
um yeah.
I think that one of the things and that you mentioned and I'm trying to put it together is that like I think it's hard for people to play slow games because there's a lack of joy in what they're doing. And so
Yeah.
I don't think that if we're able to cultivate joy and joyful people doing like if I absolutely love every single conversation that I have on this podcast or every single moment that I take to write a blog post or to play music or to start a company or to build whatever, if I'm really joyful doing it, I don't mind playing a slow game because I love it. I'll be here for 10 years because I don't mind. But most people will start building things with a rush to end because they're not
Yeah.
joyful in that moment. They're joyful with the end, right? And if we
Yeah.
bring more, that's why I think like you were saying that we're living in this the most connected area. But to me, connections are not the same thing as relationships, and I believe to you they're not. And a relationship takes time. Like Daniel Goliard, which I had on the show, he has this beautiful essay about friendship where he says that creating friendships as an adult is hard because it takes time. You need patience because once again, it's a slow process. But in order for us to solve the loneliness problem, we need to approach it with a slow mindset in a way that allows us to create relationships more than connections. And you do that. I think that you do an awesome thing shifting that, or at least to me, it helped me to build more friendships or to start building more friendships online, which was the idea of good reply game. Like if you have a good reply game on Twitter, you start to go from a connection, which is basically I follow you or you follow me or and we're mutual, to a relationship because you get closer to the worldview of that person and to create a friendship around that. And so I was wondering like uh, do you have any thoughts about like this idea of like for someone who's listening to the podcast and has no idea what smart what good reply game is, like how would you define it and what are some of the things that you can do to make it? Because I do believe in, and sorry, but I do believe that that's one of the fundamental parts of like that, and being a friendly ambitious nerd. I think there are two fundamental parts of being of allowing this modern golden age in this all of philosophy, let's call it that way, to emerge in our current time.
So your question was, how do you explain
So
good
yeah,
reply game?
yeah. Sorry, yeah. How do you spell good reply game?
Well, okay, my current favorite way of explaining it, I think, is that uh it's kind of like passing a ball back and forth. If you imagine like a skillful visualize like two football players and they're just passing a ball back and forth and they're running into space and they're and so conversations are back and you're passing conversation back and forth, you're passing ideas back and forth. And a lot of people, unfortunately, they don't r- think about, they don't see the bigger picture, right? So to have a good conversation, you kind of have to zoom out a little bit and not just respond to this person just said a thing and I'm going to respond with what I think about that thing. Like that's okay, but what you really want to be doing, in my opinion, is you want to r- read, or you try and figure out, because every utterance that any of us makes, there's an implicit proposal in it. There's a proposal of, let's play this game, let's talk about these things, let's, and not just let's talk about these things, but let's talk about these things in this way to achieve this goal, maybe. Or it's a playful exploratory expression.
Mm-hmm.
And we can use music as an analogy for this as well. So somebody's playing a melody and you can join in, and what are you going to do? Are you going to do like a rhythm section response? Are you going to try and harmonize? Are you going to try and, like, how can you make, so the Victor Wooten has this great quote. He says, my job is not to just play with him, my job is to make him sound better. And
Yeah.
then the other guy says, you're hired. And then Victor says, and that's what happens. What happens when you get good at responding to people in a way that makes them look good and makes them feel good is they want to be with you more. They want to have more conversations with you. And some people here will be like, oh, why should I do that? Like, it's what if what the other person is saying is wrong and I disagree and whatever. I'm like, if you've spent enough time disagreeing with people, you find that, again, when you zoom out, you see the big picture. Can your disagreement be constructive? So, I say that good reply game doesn't mean you agree with everything a person says.
Yeah.
You can agree poorly, or you can disagree well in a way that continues the conversation. And there's this great quote from Oscar Wilde where he says, a boor, Boor, is someone
Yeah.
who deprives you of solitude while not providing any companionship. So you say some, he's near you, he's saying shit at you, he's not paying attention to you. So you're just kind of listening to his nonsense, and you're like, okay, I don't care. What's going on? Like, and so
Yeah.
he's wasting your time, he's wasting your space, your head space,
Yeah.
and it's just, we've all known that person, and it's just, why are you wasting my time? Can you go away? Like, it's just annoying.
Yeah.
Whereas the opposite of that is someone who's paying attention to you, they're really listening, and they're like, not only are they listening to the words of what you're saying, they're getting a sense of, oh, you seem, are you trying to say this? Are you trying to go there? Here's what I think you're saying. Are you saying, like, and so it's like providing support to the other person, co-creating an environment with them that they can feel comfortable. So it might even be as simple as, oh, say more about this, or tell me more about that. What do you think about this? Like, I noticed that you when you were saying that, you kind of laughed. Like, well, why did you laugh? Like all of these, like you observe and you try and help and you try and be curious. And when you get good at this, it can become like magic. So you imagine again, like very advanced football players, like they can pass the ball, like one touch passing, right? Like he passes the ball to this guy, and the guy doesn't even need to look, and he just passes. And then the opponent's like, holy shit, I didn't expect. Oh fuck, it's like because they know each other so well, they know the topic so well, they've practiced so well, and so they can run circles around around their opponent. Like, you take like basketball, the no look pass behind the back. They're like, whoa, that looks so cool, and it's just because they know each other that well, and it takes time and experience to know people that well. That like if I look here and I throw there, my friend's gonna be there to catch me. And I've said that collaboration is humanizing, and the inability to collaborate is dehumanizing. So if you can, and you take. I've seen videos before of like a tourist sees a band playing on the street, and then the person is like, oh, can I join in? And then it turns out the tourist is an excellent jazz bass player. And you're like, this guy can go to any jazz club anywhere in the world and make friends just by joining in. Right. And we can do that in conversation as well. So like, but you have to learn how to support people, because people don't want to, what is it that people want? People want to feel collaboration. They want to feel a back and forth. And it really starts with, and I can even go further on this. It's like a healthy inner life is when you practice good reply game with yourself. And so you enjoy your own company and you ask yourself, what's going on? How am I feeling? What do I want to be doing? How do I care? And then you're like, well, I think I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. And when you get good at doing that, like the stress and frustration in your body, your face, it melts away. And then you just kind of have this more gentle, welcoming vibe. And people want to be around you because they feel that, oh, here's a person who will accept me for who I am. And they're not going to judge me and be mean to me and whatnot. And then, people come and hang out. And then, it's again, like Miles saying, I'll take care of the public, you just play, right? It's like, I'm going to provide this nourishing environment for you so that you can experiment, you can try weird things if you want, and it will be okay. I won't make fun of you. I won't judge you. We'll see if it's good, we'll expand on it. If it's bad, we'll move on to the next thing. And it's just that psychological safety, being able to provide that with someone. Like, so I've had exchanges on Twitter where everyone replying to a tweet is responding badly. And I respond with something like, I think you're trying to say X, and if that's what you're doing, I think this, and if it's not, well, something like, and then I just do put in a little bit of effort, right? And then that person DMs me with something like, wow, you're the first person who seems to understand what I was trying to do, and like everyone else didn't get it, and and then we become friends just like that. And for like years afterwards, we are still exchanging, because in that one moment, I took the effort to try and see where they were coming from, and they felt seen, right? In a world where people see each other everywhere, but they don't feel seen. They don't feel like really heard and listened, understood. So it's like, there's a lot of connection in the world. There's a lot of, we are swiping on Tinder or whatever, and it's like people feel that they are being swiped as well, and so it just feels really like you're commoditized, right? Like you're just this, nobody's going to give you a time or space or whatever. And so it really, and so the thing that I say to people is that first of all, read old books and read, like every book is in a way written by an author who couldn't find anyone to talk to about that thing, or they wanted to they really want, like every author loves their readers in some way, and that's why you read books. People ask like, why should I bother reading a book when I can just? I'm like, because when I was a kid, I was hungry for someone who gave a shit about me, and I feel that when I was reading those books, I could feel the love of the authors who care about their readers, right? And artists throughout everywhere. You can go and smile at a street busker playing guitar, and you'll feel that kinship, like just even just standing by and just nodding your head, like, you feel that you're sharing something, right? And it's all these little things that you share, those moments, you learn to share stuff with people. And the tragedy, the great triumph and tragedy of like modern capitalism is that we've gotten so good at productizing everything that we don't really need each other that much to like it's like you can get by without interacting with people. Like you can get your food delivered, you can get
Mm,
like so much so that you can, if you're not careful and you don't make an effort, you can isolate yourself. And a lot of people are very
absolutely.
isolated because they don't need each other. And
Yeah.
there's really all these there's like studies and stuff where like people in poverty, like they might have worse they have worse outcomes in a bunch of ways, but they actually have lower incidences of depression in
Mm-hmm.
part because of like the social fabric of
Yeah.
they lean on each
Community.
other, they take care of each other, and I mean
Yeah.
it's very complex. That's a subject for a whole separate podcast
Yeah.
about like health and poverty and all those outcomes. But basically the thing that we need to learn is that people, there's a quote from Sebastian Junger in his book Tribe, where he says that humans can tolerate tremendous hardship, but what we struggle to tolerate is not being needed.
Mm.
And modern society has perfected the art of making people not be needed. Like nobody
Yeah.
needs you, nobody needs you.
Yeah.
But you can put yourself in a position where you can mentor a kid. You can help someone with struggling with some specific thing. You can teach something, volunteer. Even the idea, the concept of volunteering, the this like
Mm-hmm.
as like charity, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's it's so misframed. Like so I used to volunteer in Singapore prisons, teaching interview skills to prisoners who are about to
Awesome.
finish their sentence. And the thing is, I went to it thinking I'm gonna do a good deed, I'm gonna go and whatever. And like the time that I spent with them, I feel like they helped me more than I helped them. They
Mm-hmm.
really they made me, so they were so delighted to receive us every week because we're the people from the outside world that they get to meet, right? And
Yeah.
it's just they were so warm and kind, and they really really are glad to see you. Like
Yeah.
and then you spend like 2 hours with them just chatting about life or whatever. Like we're supposed to teach them interview skills, yeah, but that's almost just the excuse. We just have to talk to them basically.
Yeah.
And then you go out and you sit at the bus stop and there's like a stranger and she is on her phone or whatever. And then I'm like, the prisoners were so happy to see me. And I mean, I'm not saying that, like this lady is just some random stranger. I don't need, she doesn't owe me anything. But I really remember going into the prison and being present with the prisoners, and they were so happy to see me that I felt my heart kind of like, I felt, oh, this is why I'm here. I'm on earth to be something to someone. And then I
Yeah.
step outside back in civilian life, and like nobody's anything to anyone. I mean, like
Yeah.
you can make an effort, you can, if something happens or whatever. But like, yeah, convenience means that nobody needs to be anything to anyone, and
Yeah.
that sucks. It's like, and so the challenge is for us to find ways to be something to someone else, right? To help the old lady with her frying pan, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And I do believe that by doing it will allow because once again we'll feel joyful, we'll allow for a slow process, and by allowing for a slow process we'll then get into like the correct frame that allows for once again this golden age to emerge, and this new lifestyle to just arise. And because I do believe that that's friendship, right? It's one of the most fundamental aspects of this modern golden age. To me, it's friendship as a value. I have one last question to ask you, Visa, which is one of the things that I've tried to ask all the guests is I'm searching for, as I said, the common values and beliefs and practices and goals that we should have to let this one golden age emerge. I was really curious on about not all of those, but I would love to have like what are some of the values that you believe we will have to share as a community to make this golden age possible?
values as a community to make golden ages possible. Well, I think one of the most important ones is really valuing new voices. I think one of the biggest mistakes so a thing that I do that I don't see enough other people doing. So people, I'm in a privileged enough position where, and it's kind of fun, kind of cool, kind of strange that people kind of copy me sometimes. Like I see people, it's very funny when I say something and I can see that people are responding to that, which is, it's flattering, it's a little bit strange, blah blah blah. But like the thing that I do that I wish more people would do is go out and look for unknown voices and encourage them. I think if everybody made a bit of an effort to do that, just this the progress will happen partially by itself. There's all these quotes. It's quotes about like if every person takes care of themselves and one neighbor, then like the world is solved. Like just no more problems, right? It's just, but it's hard, and we have to prioritize that. No, I'm not satisfied yet. I feel like there's something deeper. Values for a golden age. So yeah, so I think the frying pan thing is important. I think imagination is important. I think goofing off is important. I think I think one of the things that a lot of ambitious people, and this partially this I guess this also ties back to the frying pan thing and the long game thing. A lot of people get fixated on achieving a specific outcome that they want, and part of why when I talk about golden ages, it can be a bit flimsy and a bit vague, and it's on purpose because I don't want to give people an overly specific outcome to focus on.
Yeah.
Part of one of the things I say is that I want to surround myself with smarter and wiser and more imaginative people than me, so that we as a group can imagine things collectively that I cannot imagine myself. Right? Because if the tragic thing is if I come up with a kind of narrow vision and then we achieve it, right? As opposed to there's an even better vision that we haven't dreamed about yet. So we need to continually be dreaming new dreams and visualize, welcoming new people, seeing new things from new perspectives. And so willingness to reinvent, rediscover, reorient, shake things up, start things over. I think that's important. Long games, be kind to one another. What else for golden age? It's really strive for Valhalla. Really strive for the company of immortals. The good is the enemy of the great in a sense, right? Like, so don't get satisfied with you've impressed some people, you've made some money, like bigger, man, like really have like. But so it's like there's a tension, right? Like, so I don't want people to get stressed and be, oh no, how am I gonna be so great that people 100 years from now remember me? Like, dream big so that you're inspired, but help the old lady with the frying pan. Don't worry. Don't be like, oh, I have to become the next Shakespeare. No, Shakespeare wasn't trying to become the next Shakespeare. He just loved language and he loved plays and he just made the best plays he could, right? And same for, like Newton wasn't trying to discover, like change the world. He was just, he obsessed about the things that he cared about. So you have to prioritize, you have to privilege your own taste. You have to really, so I think people who come to discussions about ambition and grand, like, even when we say don't worry about prestige, they then kind of glom onto a guru or so don't try to be like me, please. I am the way I am because of the way I am, right? And I do have a bunch of heroes. I love Haley Williams, I love Miles Davis, I love this. So collect a list of all the heroes and put pictures of them on the walls or whatever, but don't try to be them. Try to be yourself. Aspire to be like a peer of them. Don't worship people as your heroes, but rather think, how can I be of service? How can I be a friend? And the best way to be a friend to someone who's doing great work and like as a consequence of that they're like a bit of a celebrity or whatever, is that you give them the gift of your humanity and be like treat them as a person, because when you put people on pedestals it becomes very difficult to relate to them and for them to relate to you, and then it's like it's dehumanizing, to pedestalize someone. And so no pedestals, no like nobody is better than anybody else. Encourage the beginners, celebrate good work. Always encourage people to do more and do better, and but not in like a needy and
in a joyful way.
But like just be curious, be eager to ask people what's next. Like they've done something amazing. When things are great, be very specific in your compliments. So tell people, I like this. I like how in this movie, in this book that you wrote, my favorite chapter is this because I really like that. Be specific, because that helps people know themselves better and know their work better and know the public better. Encourage people to share their work and encourage imperfect work, right? So I think there's a bunch of people who are just have good ideas, but they feel like the current manifestation of whatever they're working on is just not good enough. Like that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Like be create spaces where just like even in your group chats or whatever, right? Ask your friends what they're working on, encourage them to share their imperfect stuff, encourage them to share with more people if possible, or to work on the next version of the thing. Use each other one of the cool things about scenes is that people can do things that they might not feel comfortable doing by themselves by using each other as an excuse. So just say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, my friend Malcolm asked me to write about my theory about X, right? Because if you just write, here is my theory about X, people will be like, oh, who are you? You're just some guy, and
Yeah.
you think you're some philosopher. You think you're so great. Whereas it's like, oh, my friend Malcolm, my friend Michael asked me to write about this, so this is for them, right? So when you do
Yeah.
that, you can produce way more output, and you have an excuse, right? So like,
Yeah.
it's all these little, there are all these little things like that. And yeah, basically, I think if you trace back anything great, so there's this great video of Farrell and Timberland, and they're
Mm.
both are like comparing beats, and they're
Mm.
both be like, "Oh man, this guy just came up with the sickest beat," and
Yeah.
the other guy, and they both just be like, "Oh, what you saying that? Well, when you came out with that, I was." And the thing is, we wouldn't have such sick beats if those two guys were not trying to impress each other, right?
Yeah.
They can and like any random shit that they make would impress the casual layperson. Like they can
Yeah.
come up with a beat, they can come up with a beat in their sleep. It's better than anything either you or me could make, and we would be
Absolutely.
impressed. But the
Yeah.
two of them are like, no, I'm gonna go further. I wanna,
Yeah.
I'm gonna like, and it's that one-upmanship that like when they go back and forth for 10 years, suddenly you're in greatest of all time territory, right? Because
Yeah.
they're trying to impress. Again, it's like they're competing for Valhalla. They're not competing to impress the immediate thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just, you do that. Let's say you do that from the time you're 20 to the time you're like 60, and then you can retire if you want. You can
Yeah.
just be you can be a friendly village elder and be like, how are you
Yeah.
kids doing today? Don't stress so
Yeah.
much, relax, whatever. I'm just saying that when you're young, when you're healthy and you have options, like don't constrain yourself, don't limit yourself, like
Yeah.
just be flourish at the greatest you can flourish. And then maybe you have kids and whatever, and you kind of be more mellow. That's fine, like really really unfold and be excellent. And even then, while I joke about retiring and whatever, like I'm reminded of the Japanese painter Hokusai, who
Mm.
painted the Great Waves of Kanagawa.
Mm.
And he was like, at 60, I will just begin to understand art. At 70, I'll learn to make perfect lines. At 110, like my dots and lines will have a life of their own. Like he wanted to continue working. I mean, he
Mm.
died at like 80 something,
Mm.
but you could just see that divine. He was really playing for Valhalla. He was
Yeah.
really, I'm gonna become a better painter. I'm gonna become a better painter. And yeah, I have tried to approximate this sometimes by saying things like, one day I will write a good tweet. Like just
Yeah.
really always just
Yeah.
aim bigger. Don't be satisfied with like the praise of your friends.
Yeah.
Like because just how cool would it be that like one of our friends, like when imagine we're all old, we're like in our 90s,
Yeah.
and consensus is that some of our mutuals are Steven Spielberg, Shakespeare, Da Vinci, whatever. And it's because of the encouragement that we gave each other, right? Like we
Yeah.
challenged our friends to greatness, and
Yeah.
like just how wonderful that would be, right? And but like assuming that we don't do like so I say all these things with a very open heart, but like I do feel like I have to clarify that, but don't sacrifice your soul to do that.
Yeah.
Don't help the old lady with the frying pans.
Yeah.
Be a good friend. Be a good spouse. Don't cheat anybody. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't do any of it. Don't be proud of yourself, right? Like,
Yeah.
and live a life that you can respect and demonstrate to everyone else who comes in contact with you what a beautiful life can be.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think that what more can you ask of a life, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's
Absolutely. Absolutely. We said, well,
yeah.
that's the perfect way the way to wrap this up. If
Mhm.
people, one last question, if people want to connect with you, if they want to buy, which they should, that which is something that they definitely should, if they want to buy our books, all that stuff, where people can find you.
I mean, so you can just Google me, right? So my username is Visakanv, Visakan V. You can go on my personal website, which is visakanv.com. You can go on Twitter, which is twitter.com/visakanv. And like it's just
Yeah.
you click around, you'll find it. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put the links in the description. And Visa, once again, thank you so much for not only the conversation but all the work you put out, and all the encouragement, the kind encouragement that you do with everyone, including me. To everyone listening, please go follow Visa. He absolutely deserves it. And it's this is the end of the first season of the podcast. We'll be back shortly with the second season. If you like the podcast, you can leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Visa, once again, thank you so much. And everyone, I'll see you in the next season. Bye.